Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Highway Podcast. It's me, Bob, here, your friendly guru, who's expounding about all sorts of things, personal development, NLP, martial arts, philosophy, whatever you want. It's an eclectic mix of different subjects and different topics. And today, I've got my friend Baz Kannan, who's been on the show before. Welcome aboard again, Baz. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on for round two. I'm glad to be back again to provide some more value and be of service, hopefully.
No, it's a bit later than we hoped, but we've both been busy, I think, with lots of different things. I know you've got lots to talk about today, specifically on personal development, your experience of being coached as well as coaching. I think that's right today, isn't it?
Yeah. Early on in the year, I took some coaching from a guy called Stewart, who has the channel Physical and Mental Strength. If you guys want to check that out on YouTube.
Oh, I'll put that in the links as well below for people to check out. Actually, thanks for that, Baz.
Yeah, for sure, and learn some good information from that. So yeah, and I can talk about just how much value is provided to me, and hopefully I can make a difference.
So what was it then about Stewart's approach that you liked?
So in terms of Stewart's coaching, he mentioned to me that he did a coaching program from a couple of well-known YouTubers called How to Beast and Dave Peralta, and he did a coaching with them for like 12 weeks where he basically got all of his life handled, and he managed to completely transform his life with the help of these guys. And through that program, he was able to acquire the knowledge, acquire the experiences, and share that with me, and also help others achieve a similar success. Since there's not too many people talk about what it takes to be successful, and there's a lot of gurus out there who try to scam others and don't necessarily have your best interest. But I think with Stuart, he had his good intentions, and I'm really glad I connected with him actually, and I could share some information on how I managed to make connections with people like him.
Yeah, you see, because Stuart, I'd like to get him on here as well, and he's a difficult man to pin down. And I know he sort of made the leap from, because I met him through, he joined the Muay Thai Society at the University of Birmingham, and he had a number of physical problems based on the fact that he almost died with a tumor. So he's got his own sort of story about that, I believe, on his channel. And he found the strength, the resilience, and the motivation, and of course the determination to ignore what people were telling him, which was like, you'll never walk again, to now actually being, if you look at the size of the lad, he's a bit of a physical specimen now, isn't he?
Yeah, pretty much doing really well. I'm really happy to see the progress he's made.
Yeah, and I mean, that's personal, but in a professional sense, is he progressing on that path as well? Because I mean, I know lots of people are trying the same thing, and it's a difficult market to sort of, I hate to use the term market, to break into, but how's he doing with his business?
Yeah, in terms of his coaching business, he's pretty much pursuing that full time. And based on the knowledge which he shared me, it's really helped me a lot. I've been able to see some shifts in my mindset just from the coaching alone. But I think the main thing is even with the coaching, it's up to you to apply that information and put it into practice. Because if you just regurgitate loads of information and don't do anything with it, then it's not really going to translate to any concrete results which you're going to see. And to be honest, this is something that I struggled with in the past, where I would just watch hundreds of hours of YouTube content and never actually apply it, and then it's oh, why is my life not changed? Oh, it's simply because I didn't
you didn't do it. You had the knowledge, but you didn't act.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm at that point now where it's just a case of applying that and taking action, and that's essentially all it is. Once you have the information, you just gotta put it into practice, and then that's when you start to see the results. And it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time, because it could be months or even years, but it's definitely worth it for sure.
Yeah, procrastination is a big topic, really. And I think it lies at the root of most people's sort of mental and physical problems. When all they've got to do is simply act, but they can't for whatever reason. And that's obviously some psychological reason that they're not able to make that step. And procrastination is extent everywhere. I mean, the number of people I meet who say, well, yeah, I did have a go at this, but it didn't last long, like giving up smoking or losing weight or exercise or learning a language or whatever it is, learning guitar. People will tell me, well, they'll make excuses, won't they? I don't have the time. And it's that procrastination that causes the problem. I mean, so what you're saying is essentially you were a bit of a procrastinator.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm guilty of making excuses, all these mistakes, but I think the main thing that differentiates between successful people and people who aren't so successful is successful people. They learn how to manage their time and they're able to make times for the things they want. And I think it just comes under priorities at the end of the day. Like, obviously, if you're saying you don't have time, but yet you're spending time, watching Netflix like 24/7, like I used to do, then, you might want to take a second look and then see if you can adjust your approach and make some time to things which are actually going to benefit you in the long run rather than thinking of the short-term pleasures, which is watching TV. Like, I know it's fun and stuff, but it's like
Yeah,
you got to have that key balance.
it's about a balance, isn't it? It's about like a middle path between the extremes of either not doing anything or just go mad, completely mad on one thing, like watching Netflix 24/7. You know, and it depends what sort of value you want to put on your life, I suppose, because as far as we know, it's pretty finite, and you don't know when it's going to end, and you think, well, I need to do some stuff really that'll be fulfilling, to use that word, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that the career you people are picking is fulfilling because, to be honest, like a lot of people, they don't live by their true narrative. They just follow what society expects them to do, and they end up pursuing careers which is like not necessarily fulfilling or not necessarily what they actually want, but just because they don't want to look bad in front of others. And I think a good example is this, especially because I grew up in an Indian family. There's a lot of cultural conditioning surrounding
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
basically told that if we don't study medicine or engineering, then we're considered failures in life. And to be honest, I think that's completely not true. Like, you got to do what fulfills you, whether that's, becoming a good painter or becoming a good engineer. I mean, if medicine fulfills you, then by all means go for it. But I'm mainly talking about, you know, people who choose a career just because their parents want them to, or just because everyone else expects them to. And yeah, that's when it starts getting all dysfunctional. And yeah, it runs into all kinds of problems and it just doesn't benefit anyone in the long run. So
So living somebody else's narrative, really.
yeah, that's essentially what it is. And they're not living by their true values. And I think the key aspect really is to understand yourself and know what you want. I live by that. Like, yeah, sure, you're going to get some people judging you and telling you why you can't do something. But the reality is, it's just a reflection of their own insecurities and their own reality. And you shouldn't let that knock you off center or throw you off balance. So, it doesn't matter what their opinion is, because at the end of the day, if it's just a reflection of their own insecurities, then it wouldn't make sense to listen to them. Like, if you think about it logically, like, so you might as well just go for what you want. And another point I want to bring up is, when you take advice from people, like, you got to think carefully, critically about this. Like, take it with a pinch of salt sometimes. Like, yeah, do they, like, you want to ask, do they have the results I want, or are they just projecting their own insecurities onto me? And you really got to be aware of this, because following the bad advice, speaking from my experience, it can definitely hold you back and send you deep into that rabbit hole, and that's something you want to avoid, right? So you really got to like assess, like, do they actually know what they're doing, or do they have consistent results to prove that they are qualified to teach that. And I think in the case of Stewarts, because he's shown me the results, like he's spoken to me personally about this, so I know for sure that he practices what he preaches. So that's why I chose him out of all the other coaches out there in the industry. So yeah, things like that, really.
Yeah, and he has actually walked the walk, hasn't he? He
Yeah, he
doesn't
walks the
talk the
talk.
talk. He's walked the walk.
Yeah, and he's there to make things right and be of service to other people, and he's inspired me as well to pursue like what I want to do. So, like before, I would have fallen into the pressure of just settling for a 9 to 5 job, but because I've connected with Stuart, like he's helped me realize what I actually wanted, which is photography, digital art, graphic design, and I'm making changes, and I'm slowly making some work, doing some work to like get to where I want to be. I mean, it might take a bit of time, but yeah. But one thing's for sure, though, I definitely don't want to be in that 9 to 5 life for the rest of my life.
And the thing is, Baz, you know yourself that 9 to 5 job would probably just, you'd come to the sort of end of your life and go, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. You know, an old Tibetan guy that I met many years ago. I was about 15. Kalu Rinpoche said quite a pointed thing. He said, to live and die without regret, that's the greatest thing. And it's quite sad to say that most people around us that you meet or live in someone else's narrative. Uh, they look back on their lives. I certainly know I've got lots of friends, people my age, who are looking back on their life and going, well, what was that all about? I haven't got time to do anything now, which is blatantly not true, because as long as you've got breath in your body, you've got time.
Yeah, I think it's being consciously aware of, okay, how much time am I spending watching TV? It might be more than you realize, but unless you like snap out of it and think, oh shit, I'm spending this much time, I better cut that down. Like it took me a while to realize I was spending way too much time on social media. And once I saw by like, checking the analytics and checking how much time, I was like, okay, time to cut that down. And I've been a lot better at like progressing.
And isn't it
Tracking
true?
my time,
It
basically.
comes back to what you're saying. Actually, being on social media is trying to listen to other people's narratives, and those narratives are probably not quite a reflection of who those people actually are.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think with social media, like they only show the highlights. They never talk about the negative aspects of life. And to be honest, I've never talked about the negative aspects of my life on social media. Like it's only the people who are like closest to me. Like, I tell them like all my challenges and struggles. Like I'm just like everybody else. Like I've also got my challenges. Like I'm not open about it to a lot of people, but I
No,
definitely have them. So I'm nothing special.
yeah, everybody has challenges, though. I mean, day to day, being alive on the planet, that in itself, just being a human being, being with influences all around you, it's so easy to get, like you say, dragged down, sucked down that rabbit hole as somebody else's narrative. And that could be somebody from on TV, it could be in a book, it could be, you've got to use your discretion and think, does this work for me? Because at the end of the day, it's only you that experiences the world. You cannot, you cannot know what it's like for somebody else to their experience of the world.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for, because even though you might look at your favorite celebrity and think, "Oh, I wish I could live that lifestyle," but you really don't know what they're going through. And then you hear of those stories of certain celebrities like committing suicide or overdosing on drugs. It's like after learning about that, like it opened up my eyes as to things aren't always as they appear, and you just got to be count your wins rather than count your losses. And I think it's easy for the brain to like focus on the negative, but I think if you catch yourself and think, okay, what am I grateful for? What are the things that are going well? Like for me personally, I find that there's a lot more positives going for my life than there is for negative, and just being aware, really, really aware of that.
And just, we said this before, and I've said it on this podcast quite a few times with a lot of different people. It's about, if you're living in the moment, and you have that level of awareness, then you're responding in a way that's appropriate to the situation and without judgment. That's the key thing. Because once you get sort of trapped in the, almost like an ego tunnel, as Metzinger calls it, the ego tunnel will pull you apart, you know, and
Yeah.
like a bit like a black hole, it starts to rip everything apart. And there's so many people in that sort of spiral that you meet. Certainly in my profession, I meet them all the time. So the journey with Stuart then, was that predominantly for physical training or was that mental training as well?
I think a bit of both, to be honest. Like, I think more on the mindset aspect, because I think once I came into contact with him, then yeah, that's when like the mindset stuff really started to make a lot more sense. And I think before then, like I was watching a couple of YouTubers, like for example, I came across How to Beast back in 2017, and once I started watching his videos, like that helped me to like increase my confidence slowly and just improve the quality of my life. As I was getting by uni, and I think it was just a combination of different things, but I think it all started from meeting like people who are also on that journey, and I like really opened my eyes up, and I was there thinking, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And that's when the spark hit, and I started to make changes, like improving my clothing in the wardrobe, and improving like just learning the social skills necessary to like be able to interact with other people. And another thing, you mentioned about labels, like for example, doctors told Stuart that because he had a brain hemorrhage, then like he wasn't able to do that, when he actually proved that to be completely not true.
Yeah,
My
absolutely.
case, like because I was diagnosed with like autism or Asperger's from a young age, like I was basically told like oh, I'm going to struggle with socializing, I'll never be able to get the social life I want. But then it's just completely not true, because I took the time to read some books, learn some social skills, practice that, apply that to knowledge, apply my knowledge into practice, put myself in situations where I can meet and connect with new people, and really just getting used to being social. So now I'm at the point where I went from literally having either no friends or bad quality friends to now probably I'm having to balance myself between different friends. Like, I've reached that point where it's like, I've got enough quality friends in my life that, I've got always got someone to talk to, if I
Mhm.
need to, and people to like help you level you up, and helping you, thrive in life, really. So And I think that one of the ways I did that was, through joining Facebook groups or meetup.com, or even just university societies, which is a really good way because you already have that base commonality where, you haven't a similar interest. So, it's being able to share that and connect like with that. And with the Facebook groups, like I would contribute to the group. I would reach out to people there, and I've even set up like groups on messengers where I help connect everyone with each other. So it's like a supportive community, right? So that's essentially what I did. So now I pretty much have friends from like pretty much a lot of major cities around the globe. So if I were to go to, let's say, New York or California, for example, I've already got someone I can meet up with. Once the pandemic travel restrictions end, like, I won't be there feeling completely lost. Like,
That's a
that's the
great thing, isn't it? That's the great thing about the social media. That's how it should be used.
yeah, if you use it correctly, which most people don't, to be honest. So, I think it's catching yourself, when that happens and thinking, okay, is this actually going to benefit me or is this going to do more harm? So I think the only time I go on Facebook is just to join those Facebook groups and connect with like-minded people, and then being intentional about making friends rather than just relying on luck. Because a lot of people they just rely on making friends through either school or
Yeah.
work or the neighborhood. And chances are, I mean, yeah, I've met some great people from those places, but you don't want to rely on luck. Like, you want to be intentional and go for what you actually want. Because bad friendships, and speaking from experience, that can really send you down this rabbit hole. And I was lucky I managed to escape this, so I'm hoping no one else goes through that. But yeah,
No, I'm
that's
sure many people out there listening will be going through that same thing as we speak now. And relationships that are much closer than just friends, like people are in a relationship living together and will, just put up with it essentially. And you hear that so many times, where people just put up with each other for like 40 or 50 years in some cases,
yeah,
before they start to realize that this wasn't how they thought it might turn out. Uh,
yeah,
what you were saying about the labels as well. So I've always, my thoughts on labels, and they're just constructions that fit in with a nice theory to substantiate somebody's proposition. And like most propositions, can be pulled apart quite simply and have no solidity or foundation really with what's actually happening around you. So, when you said labels like Asperger's or autism, I always query those things because I always think, how do you know what says, how do you know the person who says, oh, the psychiatrist, the counselor, whatever, how can they possibly know that you have Asperger's simply because you have certain behavioral patterns? And are those behavioral patterns fixed? I don't think they are. My experience is labels can be just torn off. Like the labels on a clothing, you either keep them on or you take them off and chuck them away and
yeah,
then live your life the way you want to. And
yeah.
it's true to say there are some physical conditions which can prevent you from living your life fully, but then it didn't bother Stuart, did it?
No, I'd even go as far as saying, having those labels could be a limiting belief because then you subconsciously are thinking, oh, because he told me this, yeah, so I must not be good. When it's actually not true because obviously I've gone out there and done it, which means that, anybody can do that if they just put their mind to it and have that right approach and just not listen to all the negativity and limiting beliefs which can hold people back.
Oh,
And it just shows that, with the right mindset, like you can literally go for what you want. And the only thing that's really stopping you is your actual mind, because your mind is like a mental, it's like a map of the world that's processed by your mind. Because if you think about it, when you're dead, like you're not going to see anything, right? But when you're alive, if you have the positive thoughts, that's going to be reflected in your reality.
you make your reality. There's an old Zen saying, who is it that makes the grass green? Well, we know now more or less from science and neurology that, well, it's your brain that's making that color, and we give it a label, green. um, Wittgenstein, the famous philosopher, wrote a lot on language and reality, quite groundbreaking stuff. And if anybody else is listening to this, you need to look up Wittgenstein, a genius of a philosopher, and Derrida as well. And these people talked about, what you see is not reality, it's what your brain is making of it. Therefore, how you think about things, how you decide to structure that reality is entirely up to you. The sad thing is, as you've already alluded to, you'll get friends, parents telling you what they think your reality should be. You should be a medic. You should be an engineer. And it's absolutely horrendous. And you know how many lives are sort of lost, who people whose lives are not flourishing because of other people's narrative and the labels that people give them. You know, beliefs are not real. I think you've heard me say this many times. It's when we start accepting that they're real and they're bad ones, they can be very dangerous to your health, mental and physical. Some beliefs are useful to hang on to, but I think it's a bit like the difference between a pencil and a pen. Pencil's great because you can rub it out and change it. Pen, that's it. It's written down forever. The pencil is mightier than the pen. So you can have that. You can have that quote. You know, they say the pen's mightier than the sword. Well, a pencil's mightier than the pen because it's indelible. Once that ink's down, it seems like it's fixed. So it's about when things happen and you use them, you hang on to them very lightly. You know, and that includes beliefs, I think. You know, a belief's useful if it's serving you.
Yeah.
And things around work, and it affects the environment in a positive way. It affects your behaviors in a positive way. It affects your capabilities and your skills, your beliefs, your values. And ultimately, what does it do? It shapes your identity. But even that is a fluid thing. Even your identity changes from moment to moment, as you've experienced. The person you were 3 months ago is not the same Baz.
Or even before the pandemic. I don't even remember what my life was like before that.
Exactly. And you don't need to, Baz, because it's in the past.
Yeah.
You know, you put that behind you. There will be things, of course, there will be things from your past that you will want to use that are useful. But actually, we found that memory is not that good either. We tend to make bits up in memories. It's never actually the full picture, which is quite interesting. But it's enough. It's sufficient to get you motivated. And if it creates a feeling that gets endorphins flowing, then you go, oh, okay, this seems to be working then. And by being in that state of, I guess, taking things lightly, it means when things don't work out, you don't see it as a failure. Which is when we talked about this. It's a feedback loop. That's all it is. Experience is just feedback.
Like, you know, if I got rejected, for example, it just feels like, you know, instead of thinking, oh, no, I'm not good enough and telling you all these self-deprecating negative thoughts, it's just thinking, okay, what can I do differently to increase my chances of success for the next interview? Like, you know, I've been through my fair share of rejections, but, you know, once I learned from that and applied that into the next interview, I eventually got the placement, which I'm on right now. And so far it's going pretty good. So it can work out.
Yeah, of course it can. And if it doesn't, you just keep doing it. You know, I mean, there's a number of things I've done that haven't worked out over my lifetime. I think most people would have topped themselves. I think some people say to me, why don't you just get a job? That'd be so much easier. And I go, but you're not happy with your life. Duh. Because they equate success with money, position, power, possessions, big cars, big house, you know, this sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it comes back to conditioning from a young age, because I think when we go through school, like we're conditioned from like teachers, parents, society, that, you know, this is a narrative and anything outside of that is considered weird or outside the norm, and they tend to judge you for it. But then it's like, you got to understand that, you know, society's narrative isn't right for many of us, and we got to be able to think for ourselves, think, you know, what's actually right for us, rather than blindly following what other people have told us what we're supposed to do. And I think this comes back to, you know, being able to deprogram yourself and reprogram your mind so that it's propelling you in ways which is going to help you become successful rather than hold you back. Like, I guess one example would be like, you know, they say, oh, you should get a nice car once you have a job. But the reality is, like, it's going to be expensive monthly payments, which can further tie you down. And then, you know, if you're looking to get freedom, then yeah, it's going to be a lot harder now because you follow society's narrative. Like, that's just one example I'm giving. So
yeah, and there's many more. Of course there is. Yeah, and that applies to all possessions. If it's a value to you and you enjoy it, and it, I guess, makes your life better in one way or another, even if that's just making you feel good, that's fine. That's fine. But obviously, it's like I've got a friend who's got a really nice car, and all he does is worry about it getting scratched. That's all he does. He just worries about it. He won't park it next to other cars. So his whole if he goes out in his car, his whole day is spent trying to find somewhere to park it so that it's not next to other cars. He did this last week and managed to find a space in this tiny car park, which was miles away from where he wanted to go. But he found this space. He came back to the car and the birds had shit all over it. and I said, that's just the universe telling you, it doesn't matter, man. It don't matter. It's just an object. Yes, you enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great, but don't attach yourself to it. It's that light touch again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's controlling your perception towards outside events. Like obviously right now we can't control COVID because it's already happened. But what we can do is see
Yeah.
it as an opportunity to work on ourselves, which is what I've been doing. Like I've been reading a lot of books. I've been trying to find ways, if I can improve myself. And I've even managed to find some blind spots which I otherwise never would have noticed if it wasn't for the pandemic. Like I wouldn't have taken that initiative to invest in coaching, live coaching from Stewart, for example.
Oh no, of course it'd be a different Baz and be a different Bob. I mean, I'd probably still be in the gym teaching. Now, not being in the gym has freed so much time up so that I could concentrate on Medicate, the company. I could concentrate on reading more, which I love doing, playing guitar more, reading more Italian, setting this podcast up, which I never had before, but I always had an intention of doing. Meeting people like you online. Although we had met, we've had deeper conversations online than we probably would have had if we was just turning up for Thai boxing.
Yeah, that's true, to be honest.
Yeah, and you would have been a different person. Stuart would have been a different. We all would have been different, and it's a way of viewing the whole situation. And whether you believe in COVID or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is, we've got this time to use. Let's use it wisely, and let's make the most of it. Particularly if you're in a position where you can, because obviously, if you're homeless, that's another situation. That's different altogether.
Yeah, I think it comes back to perception, and I think NLP really helps with changing your perception in the way that serves you. And in fact, one of these books which I'm reading right now is one of them by Richard Bandler. If you guys,
How to Build a Successful Life, yeah. That's a fairly new book by Richard.
Yeah, so I've been practicing some of the techniques like after we did our NLP sessions together, and it's really helped me to catch myself when these negative thoughts come in and just toss them to the side because negative thoughts are not going to benefit me. So why hang on to them?
Yeah, why hold on to them? I mean, you get people. I used to get people come to me saying, "I need some more distance on my problems," so I would give them distance on their problems, move their problems away, and if that's a visual image, move it away. If that's a feeling, move it away. I mean, these things are fairly straightforward techniques, but of course, you got to always remember as well, NLP is not a thing; it's an idea, it's a concept, and it's more an attitude than anything else. And as Richard Bandler said to me many years ago, it's an attitude of curiosity that leaves behind a trail of techniques, and it's about your ability to be curious about life and about people that allows you to, as you used the word, reprogram yourself so that you can actually achieve more or less whatever you want to do within limits, obviously. I mean, if you've got two left feet, don't expect to be a brilliant football player, and all the best attitude in the world wouldn't turn you into a David Beckham or an Alan Shearer or whatever, which now I'm showing my age because those footballers are long gone as professionals. But there are certain physical limits on what people can do. However, it doesn't stop you focusing your attention on other things.
Yeah, its main thing is focusing on what's within your control rather than worrying what's outside you. Like, for example, like I'm Asian and I'm not exactly 6 feet tall, but I can't change it. So why should I worry about it? Like, I might as well focus the time on, optimizing what's within my control and then thrive in those areas.
Yeah, and to be honest, physical stature. I'm only 5'8" myself. I'm bald and grey, but I'm still about. I was talking to my partner about this today. I'm still about 35 in my head. And I'm thinking, there's more to do. There's still loads of stuff I want to do. Books I want to read, ideas I want to explore, and the deeper I go down my own narrative, you know what, that suits me just fine. I've dispelled with other people's narratives when I was 30. That's when I started deciding, nah. That's when I came to Birmingham and did my drama degree, which is a complete shift to what I was doing, which opened my eyes to all sorts of possibilities, including the NLP, because drama, theatre is all about language, and language is an interesting phenomenon. Something we're going to talk about on the Tuesday night meditation groups is language, because I think we need to talk about it. Because people get wrapped up with labels, and you've already mentioned language in a number of different ways. Labels is one of them. You know, the way we use words is not necessarily what that thing actually is in reality, whatever that means, you know.
Yeah, so labels, limiting beliefs. Like I would even go as far as saying it's limiting belief because we're subconsciously telling ourselves that we're not good enough, and that's not true at all. Like if you just reframe the way you think and turn that into an empowering belief, then you'll actually realize, oh, okay, even though I might not be where I am not right now, if I continue working towards that goal, then eventually I will, and it will become a reality if I keep at it. Like it's just remembering that it's not an overnight fix, or there's no magic fix to it. It's just a process. Like to be honest, even with the digital art stuff I'm doing, like it didn't take me one day to get good at it. Like it took me a lot of time, to be
Yeah,
honest. And
well,
obviously
it
now I'm
does.
starting to see the
Yeah,
benefits.
yeah, and you'll get better the more you do it, and your eye will get better. Your sense of balance and composition is going to get better. You know, and you'll look at things and you'll go, "Oh, how can I have this impact on someone?" And you'll be able to do it, like with music and art. You know, that's what creation's all about, isn't it? Is it creating a state in another person and trying to replicate the state it put you in and pass that on to another human being. You know, that's why art's important, why creativity is important. And yet it's stifled in education, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think with the education system, like they don't really teach us to think creatively or think for ourselves. They just tell us to blindly follow the system. Like, oh, if you get this exam, if you pass these exams, then yeah, you're gonna get a good job. But then, well, thing is, I went through the system, and according to society standards, I've been pretty successful. But then it's like I'm working 9 to 5 in a potentially an office-based job, and I'm not being able to do what I actually want to do, like with my time. It's like, wait a minute, something's not quite right there.
Well, it's true. It's because you live in somebody else's narrative, you know, society's narrative. And education, the way it's structured, is to get you to pass. You said it, to get you to pass exams. It's not getting you. I was talking to some doctors, medics yesterday, PAs, physician associates, when I was teaching them yesterday with a friend's company, Matrix Education. And I was explaining to them that my job is to turn you into a good clinician. Yes, we want you. You need to pass the exams to get the certificate to practice, but don't forget what brought you to medicine in the first place. If this is your passion, if your idea is you're doing medicine to help people, keep that as your central focus. Yes, we know you've got to pass the exams, but don't forget you're a human being that wants to help people. And in education, it's the same thing. They just bums on seats, get you out the door with a qualification, stick you in the job. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, the people who are really are movers and shakers, or the people like, I don't know, Steve Jobs, and people who weren't afraid to just go, fuck the status quo. I'm just going to do what I want. I can create this laptop. I can create a computer that will sit on your desk. And people mocked him. I can create a pad like Star Trek where you touch it. I mean, I remember when those sort of things were just a joke. There was just no way that was ever going to happen. And now you've got Elon Musk sending men into space on his own rockets. Doesn't need NASA anymore. You've got people like that who say, well, it can be done, actually. We can do it. Everybody else said, well, you can't have an electric car, too complex, too complicated. The batteries are going to be too big. It won't run for very long and it won't go fast. And then Musk comes along with, his car.
yeah,
And it's an incredible piece of technology. And then
yeah.
he decides he's talking about putting men on the moon now. And he's designed a rocket ship that'll take off, go into orbit, come back and land on legs, like in the movies. And he's doing it.
I mean, it
Now,
sounds
how
awesome, to
come,
be honest.
how come the American government couldn't do that, or the Russian government? And you know why? It's exactly what you're saying. Limiting beliefs. They didn't think it was possible.
Yeah, it's limited. It's like, thing is, when you set goals, it's gonna seem unrealistic until you start taking steps to progress towards it. Like, so that's why you always want to like shoot high, because obviously, when people say you can't do something, it's just a reflection of their reality. They think they can't do it, so they're gonna project onto you, like on a
Yeah,
subconscious level. And
yeah.
then, the main thing is, if you're able to think for yourself, like you'll realize that okay, he's not in a position to give me advice, or they
Mm.
don't understand like what my capabilities are. So I'm gonna use it as an opportunity to like prove them wrong. And obviously, right now, like we've managed to achieve some pretty amazing things. Like even this year, like I've been having video calls with people all the way from California, and it's just amazing how far we've come in terms of technology and stuff. So
It's incredible. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what can be done now. I mean, if you got to think, I was born in the 50s. Yeah, I mean, they were only just starting to put rockets up into orbit and satellites. I mean, the year I was born, the first satellite went up, the first satellite Sputnik, September 1956, and I was born in the August. And by 1969, men were walking on the moon. I mean, and now we've got a space station with 11 people orbiting the Earth. Unless, of course, you believe the Earth's flat, in which case it's all a lie.
I do not believe the Earth is flat at all.
Well, I've seen the footage. It looked pretty real and round to me. But again, it's what we're talking about, beliefs, you see. Some people are like convinced. They've convinced themselves that the Earth is flat. And no matter what you say and whatever evidence you give them, they'll stick to that belief. Now, this is dangerous. This is how religion causes problems and politics causes problems, because people get trapped in their belief systems. And it happens at a microcosmic level with families. As we've said, when parents say, this is how the world is, this is how you're going to live it, they're trying to tell you their Earth's flat. And you're going, it's not. I want it. I know it's round, and I'm going to find it, you know? And people are afraid to go off the edge of their map. You use the term map, it's an old Kozybski thing. The map is not the territory. Every map is our map. My map's my map of the world. Yours is yours. We discussed that in detail, how maps affect people. A lot of people, their maps are very limited, and they're afraid to go off the edge of the map because they're going to go into the abyss. But if everybody had been like that, we wouldn't have gone to the moon. We wouldn't have sailed around the world back in the 1500s. Magellan decided that he would go. Columbus decided he would go, and they took huge risks, as well as the chance of ridicule, let alone death. I mean, to travel around the world on a piece of wood with 20 other blokes, with all sorts of diseases, with no knowledge of nutrition or navigation, and take that chance. But it opened up a whole new world, didn't it?
Yeah, and obviously right now, and obviously with the Wright brothers, like they invented the airplane, and now people are traveling every day and less than a day just to go to Australia, and it's incredible how far we've come just from that
Yeah.
one event.
And Elon Musk is talking about a spaceship now instead of aircraft, and it's going to save fuel. It's going to save the climate, the planet, because less pollution. He said the thing's going to take off. It's going to travel into orbit. So you'll go into orbit, and then in a couple of hours, you'll be in Australia, because obviously the Earth's turning. So you're going to take advantage of that. And he's actually working on that.
Yeah, really excited actually going forward.
I mean, who's to say that that's not going to be I mean, if you give it to Musk, it's probably going to be a reality in 5 years. And he's been working on it. And he said at the moment, we reckon it's going to cost about 10,000. And this isn't a lot of money, really, when you consider what you're getting. You can get to Australia in a couple of hours by rocket for about $10,000. Now, that's not a lot more than a first class ticket on British Airways, which I think is about $6,000 or something.
$6,000.
Incredible. And of course, once it becomes commonplace, and then the realization is actually we can do it, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and eventually we'll all be traveling like that. Not in my lifetime. Well, I don't know. Maybe we will.
Yeah, we have no idea. Just take things as it comes,
Yeah, absolutely. And the limits are the things you put on yourself.
Yeah, and I think this affects 90% of the people. like it holds them back from get them to where they actually want to be. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really I'm like my mission is to change that, and obviously I'm sharing the information on here to hopefully help all of you guys watching this and be able to take away some key knowledge which is going to help you propel you forward.
And that's the idea of this podcast, isn't it, Baz? And I know you've been on other podcasts as well, talking about similar sort of stuff. And the idea of that highway code is it was like a guidebook to life, as in the highway code is about safe driving. This is about safe passage. That's where the name came from, the highway code.
Yeah.
And who knows? Other people might listen to this and go, "Oh, actually, they've got a point." As long as we don't come across as we're trying to sell stuff. But talking about selling and books, you bought Richard Bandler's book, right? And you mentioned it, you used a term there, which is reframing. You do know he's written books on reframing specifically.
I mean, that just shows, just how much information's out there. It's just a case of, we got to take the initiative to,
And he wrote that book back in the 80s. He wrote that book back in the 80s, a book called Reframing. A really nice book, which I will have, of course, somewhere on my shelves. If not in here, it's going to be next door or upstairs in the loft. And he wrote another couple of books on language called, quite nicely, The Structure of Magic. He said because he believes that actually language is like magic. It's like spells, and how you use language will have an impact on you, and how language shapes you and your world. And by changing language, guess what? You change your perception, which is, it's not a new idea, but it's not an idea that's generally accepted because we give very little credence to language. But the language we use, and this all comes back to what you were talking about, narratives at the beginning. What's a narrative? It's language. It's words that people give you.
I think about values as well.
Yeah, 10 minutes ago you said when people say things like, "Well, I can't do that." As soon as you said that, my first thing is, I wonder what would happen if I did. That's the way you've got to think. That's a reframe. When you say to yourself, "I won't be able to do that," just say to yourself, "I wonder what will happen if I do it."
Yeah.
What would happen if I did it?
It's just thinking what can go right rather than what can go wrong. And I think too many people, they just focus on what can go wrong. But actually, if you do like a table column where one column says what can go wrong and another column says what can go right, you'll actually find that there's a lot more that can go right than can go wrong. And I think this comes back to, when you're investing in yourself, like let's say, for example, I wanted to get coaching from Stewart. Like obviously I would have to invest hundreds, maybe thousands of pounds. But then if you think about the return I'll get from taking that decision, like it's actually a lot more than the cost. But a lot of people, they'll see the cost and think, "Oh, that's expensive. I'm not going to do that." But then when it comes to like a holiday, for example, they won't hesitate. So I think
no, absolutely, Baz. Yeah, it amazes me that people invest so money in holidays, which are short-term moments of happiness, which they hate leaving. People always say to me, I've heard, I shouldn't say always because that's a bit of a generalization, but a lot of people I know go on holiday, they'll say, "Yeah, it was great." I'll say, "How was your holiday?" They go, "Yeah, it was great, but I didn't want to come back. It took me about 4 days just to wind down. And then I had about 7 days away. And then all I was doing was thinking, oh God, my holiday is going to be over in 3 days." I'm thinking, what? How much did that cost? How much did you? And then you say to them, right, it's going to cost you £100 to stop smoking to save your life. Oh, I can't afford that. Well, okay. Weddings. I mean, it amazes me that people will spend £20,000, £30,000 on a one-day wedding, but they won't invest a couple of £100 in their own personal development.
Yeah, or even the NLP, to be honest, like, like the way I see it is if I were to get some NLP sessions, that's like completely changing my beliefs, shifting like my perception to one which is going to propel me forward. And obviously I'm feeling a massive difference. Everyone else said to me that, they feel a massive change in my vibe, and it's just worth it, right? So
well, I've seen a big change, because, and I don't think you mind me saying this, do you? I mean, you, from when you first came on the little meditation group on a Tuesday night, you've made significant, all of us, even Pete Gorman's gone, "Baz is brilliant. Look at him." He's like who was it? I think it was Tina when you weren't on. She said you were like a flower blossoming. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, you're just a flower, mate. But that's how it comes across now. And and I was saying to the guys on the group, I said, well, because one of the guys said, "Oh yeah, did you help Baz with it?" I said, "No, we all help Baz with it. That's how it works. We're just all part of the process." And it's like you yourself. You're not finding one specific person. You still, like me, you'll still look at other things and go, oh, that's like a butterfly jumping from flower to flower, going, I'll have a bit of that. Oh yeah, I'll have a bit of that. And that's what you've got to do. It's when you get trapped with one fixed system, if you like, and you think this is it. It never is. It never. I've done that myself when I was younger, Baz. You go, yeah, I found it. This is the man who's going to help me. This is the guy who's going to teach me meditation. This, I'm going to get enlightened. No, I wasn't. But I learned something from him, which usually were things like, well, I can't give you anything. You know, you take what you need and then move on. That's a good teacher. That's somebody who has your interests at heart, as opposed to the ones who go, yeah, sign up for my next course. Yeah, sign up for you go,
Yeah, $997 for my social media marketing course. Like I've seen plenty of those around.
oh, how many of those? I mean, yeah, absolutely. And now that doesn't mean that some people have skills that you should pay for, but, and I've always said this is something, Richard. I don't know whether I've said this to you, Baz, but I've mentioned it when I've been teaching NLP and stuff. And Richard Bandler always used to say, "You only pay for the change." So when I used to have clients, I'd say, "If you don't change, I'll give you your money back." And they go, "What?" I go, "Well, if I took my car to the garage and the guy couldn't fix it, I wouldn't pay him." I'd go, "Okay, sorry, mate, I'll take it somewhere else." And the mechanic wouldn't go, "Oh, I'm sorry, mate, I can't fix it. That's £100." It's literally, you know, if Dave comes to fix my boiler and he can't fix it, he doesn't charge me. I would hope he wouldn't. I don't think he would, but it's absolutely true. And it's like there's some online stuff that I'm involved with Gaia House down in Devon, and it's skepticism, Buddhism, meditation, and there's 3 teachers going to be running an online program over a weekend. You know, a bit like the sort of stuff we do, and it's donations, right? And it advises. So just to give people an idea of the sort, just to give the instructors a bit of cash, just to pay them for all of their time, you know, 16 hours, 2 8-hour days. And these are highly experienced people, one of whom I know very well, and he's well worth the money. It says around $100 because it's in dollars because it's worldwide. And a mate of mine who you do know, but I'm not going to say who it is, and it's not Pete Goldman. He said, it's not. He went, $100? That's a bit steep, isn't it? And I went, what? That's just a recommended. If you want to go on and pay $5, you can. You'll still get the same. I said, but you would generally, don't you think it's worth more? Well, yeah. I said, to have contact with those 3 experts in their field that you can grill, you're working with them online. I mean, don't you think that's worth something?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting some value.
Of course you do.
It doesn't work out, like you learn something, right? So
absolutely. Now, I'm the sort of person I'd look at that and go, I want to do that course because I want to ask a few questions. And these are historical things, but it's something I'm very interested in, putting things in perspective and context. And I'd happily pay 250 quid for the whole weekend because I know what these things cost and I know what they're worth. And I know what those 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, I know how much they're worth. But they're Buddhists, secular Buddhists, and they won't take money. They won't ask for a specific amount. They'll take donations. And that's a big risk to make a living like that. It's like the Vipassana group, you may have heard. It's a worldwide organization now, and it runs purely on donation. 10-day course, and you pay what you can. You're fed, you're clothed, you've got a bed. I mean, it just beggars belief. And of course, it's a 10-day course. I mean, 10 days of intense Vipassana and Samadhi meditation with experts who know what they're doing. And people complain and go, oh, well, I was going to go on it, but I only paid them tenner for 10 days. You tight, you know. it's human nature, though, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the main thing is like if you want to be successful and part of the top 5%, then you got to be willing to do things which most people aren't necessarily willing to do. Like for me, for example, like I've spent probably hundreds, if not at least up to £1,000 at least, like in my personal development. So buying books, getting coaching from Stuart, and just reading a lot, watching a lot of videos and courses online. And obviously, when you put that into practice, you start to reap the benefits, and then it actually feels pretty amazing coming out the other side, to be honest. So
yeah. And I've seen it in you as well, and I know you have because you've talked about it a lot. Which is one of the ideas of doing this podcast, wasn't it? To show the people watching it that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is another way of doing things. And you said it right at the beginning, which is really important. It's about taking action. It's about doing it. And I mean, you're talking about how much this has cost. Imagine how much it's cost me. I've been on the planet 64. I've been searching since I was about 12. You know what I mean? And I'm still on the journey, and I still spend money, and I've spent, thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on NLP training, and it was money so well spent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just taking that first step, right? And
yeah.
Not fearing the unknown, basically. Instead of thinking what can go wrong, think, okay, if this works out, then it's obviously worth it, right? Obviously, I went through it, so.
I spent inordinate sums of money on books. Books like I just recently bought a book on Puranian Buddhism, right? And it's 130 pages. It's about that thick. £44. Right? Now, I looked at the price and I thought, yeah, but I know what's in that. I know what I need to get out of that book. And I know this book's going to make my brain, it's going to do things. It's even if it was my last 44 quid, I would have bought it. And I bought it, and guess what? It is exactly what I expected. It's an academic work, but it's detailed. It's hard work, because working on yourself can be. But it's just amazing. But like all these things, Baz, they lead to the next thing, don't they? You go, right, I need to follow that up now. And that's great, because the good thing is, Baz, it doesn't come to an end.
Nah, it's still a journey. Like even for me, to be honest, it's still the beginning. But basically, based on the progress I've seen, like for the past year and a bit since the pandemic started, like it's quite a journey. So many more to come.
Well, I think we're almost up to the hour now. I think there's room for it. Yeah, I think there's room for another podcast. What were you going to say, Baz? Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, speaking of investing in myself, like I was going to say, like, we live in the best time in the history of humanity to like invest in ourselves. Like we have an advantage compared to like, our parents growing up in the 90s where we didn't have internet and stuff.
The 90s. I thought you were going to say the 50s. My parents grew up in the 30s. Yeah. Sorry, Baz, go on, mate.
Yeah, it's just a one recommendation. Like, it's not a sponsorship, by the way, but it's something which I've been reading and I recommend it to anyone who's watching this. Like this book I'm reading called The Lifestyle Blueprint.
Okay.
Like, it teaches you like, how to get the relationships you want, so you're not settling for toxic relationships. That's one of the aspects. So there's another one like building your social circle, which not too many people talk about, and also like, learning some monetizable skills to help you make the money you want and go follow your passions and be able to live a lifestyle which you're truly happy with. So basically like escaping building a reality where you don't want to escape from it. So and it's only like what, $17 on Amazon. So you're literally paying that much amount of money to potentially change your whole life with actionable steps. So
good. And you would recommend those, yeah?
Yep. So The Lifestyle Blueprint, you can find it on Amazon by this guy, Dave
Perotta. Yeah, you mentioned him earlier on, didn't you? Yeah.
Really great guy.
But if you send me a message with the links on, just drop me a thing on Messenger with the links on. I'll put them in the description box on YouTube.
Yeah, sounds good.
And I can follow it up. I know people sometimes they'll go, and they won't bother going back to the video again. They look in the text box below for information. If you put a list of those recommended books and sources, then we'll put those up. So I think we've got quite a lot of material today. And I'd like to sort of take this a little bit further, possibly, and let's look at what you've been getting out of Perotto's book.
Oh, just to like, he talks about the mindset shifts which you need to take. Like, it's understanding why some people are successful and why some people aren't quite.
So reprogramming.
Yeah, like reprogramming your mindset basically, and also highlighting actionable steps. And he even has a section on destroying your excuses, so that way you don't fall back onto excuses whenever you find yourself having to make a decision, which a lot of us fall into that trap. But yeah, that's the great thing about this book.
Good. And Richard Bandler's book, obviously, I'm going to mention that. Because he was one of the earliest people to start pushing this stuff out there, wasn't he? But it was a very practical application of mindset change, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, me and Stuart, like, we've read Dave's books, so yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of change based on that alone. So
good. Well, okay then, Baz. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on again today. We'll do part 3 in a couple of weeks' time, I think. But we'll be having a chat before that, so we'll have some interesting topics, won't we, Baz?
Yeah, as always.
And I'm glad things are working out for you, Baz. So I just want to say to everybody watching and listening, thanks for taking the time out to listen to this. Follow up the links in the text box below, the books that Baz has talked about, because I can say on a personal level, I've seen some massive changes in Baz. So whatever it is he's doing is working, and it is sustained as well. It's not a short fix. It seems to be sustainable, doesn't it? I think would be fair to say.
Yeah, the main thing is not to get complacent, since that's an easy trap to fall into. So yeah, I'm going to work on continuing the efforts and seeing how I can level up even more.
So Baz Kannan, a lack of complacency, we'll call this. I might come up with something. I don't want to put a label on you. And with that, Baz, I'd like to say, have a great afternoon, mate. It's good to see you, and take care of yourself.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Bob.
Yeah. Okay.